today's topic of discussion is sexual discipline. So if you look at today's society, right, there are a lot of guys who have no sexual discipline when it comes to women. So we're going to be discussing some key points in terms of why sexual discipline is so important for men and how to effectively apply it to your day-to-day life. So first point is lust. Now I'm going to play this 30-second clip of a guy called Michael Ward. He's getting charged with all types of crazy charges, and there's another woman who's come out and said how he spiked her drink. So I'll play it now for you guys.
How are you trying to push a girl that's unconscious in a sprinter? How are you trying to push a girl that's unconscious in a sprinter? And you're telling me that those guys aren't on some P. Diddy thing. And I saw this brother again and he did it again. And you guys still want to defend him.
Okay, so you guys are back now. So you've had to watch it out. Now, Michael Ward was on the come up stage. He's a successful young black man who has managed to make a name for himself. Now, the issue is, right, the charges he's facing related to that case. So he's got a case with that woman, and then there's another woman in the second clip that's from several years ago as well. So he's got several different cases on him. Now, that woman was at one of his parties. So he had done a party, and guys and girls, they were free mixing, drinking alcohol, and doing all types of wild activity. So these guys here were thinking, oh, okay, we'll have a drink, enjoy ourselves, get some girls, and we'll start fornicating with them. Well, what happened was, the girl was saying that it's either Michael Ward or the set of people around him spiked her drink, and then they were trying to get her into a Sprinter van. So that's a van where, take them to a hotel and try and fornicate with them, and whatever the case is. The issue is, right, this guy here wasn't able to control his lust. Now, there's a bunch of guys in society who, as soon as they get around women, attractive type women, girls who are seen as pretty, they can't control themselves. They let their lustful urges take over. Now, that's what the issue is when it comes to being able to control yourself. If you don't have any sexual discipline, you're not able to control your dirty sexual, lustful desires, you're going to end up catching cases like that. Now, those type of cases, they damage you for life. You can't get away from it. It's not where, I can try and brush it under the carpet. I think that, people are just going to forget about it. It's literally for life. When you have them type of consequences, and when you are erratic, you don't have no sexual discipline, you make moves off of impulse, these women here are just going to drag you down. So next point is weakness. The issue is that there's a bunch of guys, as soon as they get money, status, fame, and all this other stuff, they get a bit of limelight, they get a bit of clout, but they had a weakness towards women previously. And then when they get those things, it amplifies. Now, there's another guy you guys have probably heard of, Fredo, the rapper. His gang getting sentenced to like 100+ years in prison. And there's a bunch of other stuff coming out related to Fredo and his associates. And who's exposing it? Women. You know, this is what the issue is. A bunch of these weak beta males are doing all this pillow talking with women, telling all their secrets, stuff that you've been through, X, Y, Z, stuff that you're doing on the roads, doing on the streets, certain activities that you guys are doing. These guys here just blab it all to their women. And those are the same women who end up turning on them afterwards. You know, don't think for a second that women aren't plotting and scheming. Certain guys, they think, oh yeah, I can just sleep around with a bunch of women and say, oh yeah, all these women are going to be alright with it. They're going to be cool with it. Nah, it ain't going to happen. You know, so you got that Fredo guy, you got another guy, what's his name, Andrew Tate. He was another guy who's opening his big mouth, big gob, talking the most on the internet. Started getting pressed with all types of crazy charges. You know, if you don't have sexual discipline, you're not able to control yourself, you're not able to speak to women for marriage purposes, you're going to end up getting destroyed in the long run. You know, so some of you guys who are watching this right now, you know within yourself that you've got a weakness towards women. You know, you can't control yourself and you get all these desires and all these thoughts, which a lot of times is normal. So men and women, they both experience desires, but it's whether or not you can control yourself, which a lot of times people can't. You know, that's what the issue is. When you can't control yourself, when you're not able to control your desires, you're just going to end up getting into problems like that. So, next point is turn off. Guys don't seem to understand when it comes to women, it's a major turn off anytime a guy doesn't have sexual discipline. A guy who's just constantly chatting up all these women, staring at all these different women, jerking off, watching X-rated content, and so on. You know, you could be the most attractive looking guy, you could be the most successful, you know, have the most money and all these other external metrics. If you don't have sexual discipline, a woman's just going to get turned off. She can't help herself. She's naturally going to get turned off. You know, she wants to see a man who has internal strength, who's able to get women, but he can control himself. He does it in the correct way, which is marriage. So I've mentioned that when it comes to the previous videos about polygamous relationships. So if you're somebody who wants to entertain multiple women, there's certain rules and regulations that you need to follow, which God has legislated. You know, if you're not doing it the right way, you know, a woman's going to end up losing respect for you guys. And then when she loses respect, it's only so long until she eventually exits out. And that's what happens with a bunch of these guys on the internet, all these influencers. How many of them have actually got healthy long-term relationships? Little to none. So, final point is case. That's what happens. If you don't develop your sexual discipline and learn to control yourself, you will catch cases like that guy Michael Ward. No one wants to be in that type of position when you go out on the streets and people start calling you the R word, start calling you predator and all types of stuff, calling you a nonce and everything. You don't need any of that type of attention on you. So the way to prevent that is talking to a woman for marriage purposes. You make it clear from the get-go about a woman. You actively filter her and you vet her and you tell her, okay, look, this is what I'm looking for. These are my requirements. Speak to her dad, her family, her wali, guardian, whoever. Make sure that they're involved. And then that way there, it's mutual. Because she can't start pulling some BS later on and saying, oh yeah, this guy here tried to do X, Y, Z with me. It's like, nah, I was talking to your family, talking to your dad. We was getting to know each other properly through marriage purposes. She can't pull these crazy charges on you afterwards. Because it's like, there's no proof, there's no evidence. But what happens is these guys here are meeting each other alone, getting to know each other, dating and fornicating with each other and whatnot. And then later on, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, this guy here has ended up catching a case. And then you're scratching your head and you're thinking, I slept with that woman years ago. But nah, these women here don't forget. Now some of them can be genuine, some of them can just be fake. Where a promiscuous woman who's just sleeping around with a bunch of guys, but because she saw that you was leveling yourself up, you was improving yourself, she was like, okay, now's the time for me to drag him down. Don't give these people a chance to destroy you guys. So, just to wrap up, lust. If you're somebody who can't control these lustful thoughts, lustful desires, you're going to end up like Michael Ward, Jamie from Top Boy, getting done with flipping crazy charges. That right there ain't attractive. It's not what you need in your life. When you're waking up and you're hearing all over social media, all over the news, out on the streets, whenever you're walking out and about, people just shouting all these names at you. Not just shouting names at you, you're actually getting into altercations. People want to fight you, people want to potentially harm you. He might even be innocent, but the evidence is looking pretty overwhelming. Not to mention there was that other woman, she was talking about getting spiked at an after party. And this is what it is. These women here, right, their dads clearly don't care about them, because what sort of dad is comfortable with his daughter going to these type of parties where there's alcohol, there's free mixing? When you're in them type of environments, what's going to happen? Boys and girls are just going to fornicate with each other. And then certain times, these people here end up catching all types of diseases. These lot here are sleeping around with each other and catching all types of craziness. So, you guys here are watching this. You guys are going to have moral values. You're not going to be trying to be in those type of environments. So, next one after that was weakness. A bunch of these guys have got a weakness towards women. Some people it's drugs, Some people it's money. Some people it's women. You know, some of you guys probably know a certain guy who's always getting into problems with women. Can't control himself. You know, getting used and abused by women. It's because of what? They can't control themselves. They don't have sexual discipline. Next one after that was turn off. Anytime a guy is behaving in a dirty sexual way, staring at multiple women, can't control himself, watching X-rated content, all of those things are going to turn off a woman. You know, it leads to a lower desire. Women see that this guy here doesn't have control over himself. He's just all over the place. You know, you don't want to be labeled as that type of guy who just can't control himself. The final point was case. That's what happens with guys. Guys end up catching cases. When you end up catching cases like that, forget about trying to be successful and trying to get money and all these things here. That's it, you're damaged for life. You know, just know certain times, these type of people here, they're just cancelled throughout all their career now. So when it comes to, let's say, with that guy Michael Ward, he's trying to go for other movies, he's trying to go for other TV shows, he's trying to go on certain podcasts. You know, people don't want to associate with that. They're going to be like, nah, sorry mate, we're going to have to cancel that. You know, sometimes these guys have got sponsorships with certain brands. So let's say a clothing brand. So let's say, for example, he was sponsored with Nike. You know, when you get cases like that, 9 times out of 10, these brands end up dropping you. You know, so it's a money hit as well. Money, status, you know, you get, all those different areas get hit. So, you guys here don't want to be anywhere near those. You guys here don't want to be in those type of situations. So, hope that makes sense, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.